Hundreds of thousands of asylum seekers congregate at our southern border attempting to enter the United States, overwhelming Border Patrol and aid infrastructure, and raising alarms for commentators across the nation. Why are we seeing this massive influx? Should we care? And what can we even do about it? You're watching Politics Corner. Stay tuned.
Hey folks, welcome to Politics Corner. Hey Ishaan.
Hey Pallavi.
So today we're talking about the crisis at our southern border. So more specifically, the border that we share with our southern neighbor, Mexico. So Ishaan, why don't you start us off by first of all telling us a little bit about our relationship with our southern neighbor?
Well, I will tell you that we are much more economically intertwined with Mexico than we like to talk about. We talk a lot about our trade relationship with several Asian countries, namely China and Taiwan, but we are very economically intertwined, especially through trade with Mexico. Mexico buys more from the United States than they import from any other country, and they sell more to the United States than they do any other country. And the United States, we do depend on a lot of agricultural goods from Mexico. So we definitely wouldn't be in a great position if something were to sour our relationship.
Right, exactly. I mean, and I think not a lot of folks realize that we actually get a lot of our food from farms from Mexico.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so would you say, I think there's also this misconception that Mexico is a very impoverished nation. Do you agree with that?
I would not agree with that assertion. I think when you say the word impoverished, it tends to imply something like North Korea or maybe a very kind of third world nation. And that's definitely not the state of Mexico in the modern day.
Right. So I think in that, with that pretext, let's start talking a little bit about what's happening with this crisis. What exactly is this crisis?
For sure. So I think when we talk about what is the southern border crisis, the true thing is the devil is in the details, and it really depends on who you ask, because everyone has sort of taken it and twisted it to fit their political narrative. But in general, when we say southern border crisis, what we're really talking about is typically illegal immigration, crossing from Mexico to the United States without the permission of U.S. Customs.
Yeah, and again, since we already prefaced that Mexico is not an impoverished nation, then what's the reason? Why are people, why are they flocking to the United States?
Well, I think that there's a couple of things. First of all, when we say that Mexico is not an impoverished nation, that is true, but also not to imply that Mexico is somehow better off than the United States. The United States definitely has a higher social mobility score. We have a higher average annual salary. So the United States is definitely a more wealthy country in comparison to Mexico. Mm-hmm. But also, a lot of people leave Mexico for more practical reasons, often fleeing violence, crime, or even just to reunite families.
Right. And before we get into the details, why don't you actually go in a little bit about, I think you mentioned the social mobility score. So what exactly is that score?
Right. So the United States social mobility score currently is 70.4. I believe this was an international survey where they scored all these different nations out of 100 in terms of how socially and economically mobile their citizens were. And they found that the United States was around 70.4, which does lag behind a couple of European nations. But in comparison to Mexico's 52.6, it is staggeringly better. Right.
I mean, basically, the number indicates how likely a person is able to move upward in the socioeconomic scale, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's definitely attractive to come into the United States. So I guess the situation is that we have hundreds and thousands of people coming to our southern borders, and they want to be led into the country. And of course, we have some immigration policies and procedures in place. But what exactly is going on with what we have in place already that is just not able to address this demand?
Right. So I think what you're talking about are the caps on different immigration categories, such as applying for asylum or for permanent residence or for work visas. And depending on the situation, it is true that we do have some policies that make this incredibly difficult. For example, depending on the situation, you might end up waiting 24 years before your visa can be processed.
So, I mean, that's the knee-jerk reaction that we hear, right? So just open it all up and let everybody in. What's wrong with that?
Well, I think that suggestion is based on the assumption that these policies have created the crisis, and in reality, that's a bit of a misplaced blame. For example, if I'm throwing a house party, but my house can only hold 10 people, so I say to 10 people, hey, you can come in through the front door, let's go. But here's the thing, 50 people want to come into the house. Well, then I've instituted a policy where I say I will only let 10 people in, and then I have 40 people trying to break in through the windows. Did my policy make them want to break in through the windows? No. I had to restrict them.
Yeah, because if you let everybody in, it would just overwhelm your house.
Exactly. I would be breaking fire codes. I would be super cramped. I might not have enough food to feed all these people. And similarly, we can't let that many more immigrants into the United States because we're already exhausting our public infrastructure and welfare systems.
Actually, I like your analogy, and I think that a lot of people don't understand this. They think it's because of a lack of wanting more immigrants and, not wanting to simplify the policy. But it's not that. It's actually because of a lack of
capacity.
Capacity, yes, exactly. It's because of a lack of capacity.
Precisely. So because of these factors, people have always tried to cross our border illegally. And as you can see, to curb illegal immigration, we've built several walls along the border, some only to prevent vehicles and some to be complete pedestrian barriers, as you can see on this map. But as you can clearly see, there are these areas in gray which are just completely unprotected, which makes them key targets for illegal immigrants to try to. So the most common border crossing area is the Sonoran Desert, which is demarcated on this map here. Now, California is a sanctuary state, but it's actually pretty uncommon to try to come directly here since you'd be crossing through this heavily patrolled area. So instead, people try to head to Tucson or Phoenix, avoiding the two major highways and Interstate 8, which keeps them basically in the wilderness the entire time. And that is super concerning on a human life level.
Super concerning is absolutely right. Because if you remember Biden's predecessor, Trump, his idea to secure the border was, hey, let's build a wall. Now, that was a very controversial, proposal. It did not go down well with many Americans because it was considered racist and xenophobic. But Biden's approach to this, which is let's just leave, the Sonoran Desert be the, deterrent, because most people will realize they have almost a negligible chance of survival and they're not going to even attempt this. And let that be the deterrent to our border crisis situation. That's not working at all. And not only that, it's incredibly inhumane because people are still attempting to cross that desert. And, with those harsh conditions, their chances of making it through are, like I said, almost slim to none.
Yeah, exactly. I believe only 15% actually successfully make it through. 85% are either detained or more commonly, they simply die in the desert, often because of the heat. And it's no surprise why. They enter at night. It seems pretty cool. People underestimate how quickly it can become burning hot. At night, 50 degrees. There's coyotes, there's other predators, but if you can manage those, it's a reasonable temperature. The moment the sun comes up on an average summer day, it can almost immediately peak to 120 degrees.
Right.
If you're not prepared, you're going to be in a very difficult situation.
And most of them are not, right? They're not carrying enough water.
Of course not. They want to travel light.
Exactly. And there are women and children. They're pretty weak.
Often unable to keep up. And actually, I was watching a documentary, and I have a clip here. This is by Risk Takers. They did an incredible documentary. I loved it. Talking to a Border Patrol agent about what his biggest concern is with these kind of search and detainment missions at night.
Right now it's 1 o'clock in the morning. If you look north of here, there's nothing but open desert. This group gets out here. It doesn't look to me like they have much water, and we'll check here in a minute. But come sunrise, 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, it's gonna be 90 degrees at 8, 9 o'clock in the morning. By 10 o'clock, it might already be 100. So you need a group like this with these kids that can't keep up. You're just looking for problems here. These are the groups that it's important we catch before they get too far north and they get into the danger zones.
And by the way, those are the lucky ones, the ones that actually get caught, whether they realize it or not, because
absolutely,
they get caught and sent back. They're gonna live.
Exactly. And the big thing is, if you try to cross the Sonoran Desert, you are far more likely to die of a heat stroke than you are of actually being detained.
Now, this is super concerning because of the way the Biden administration has tried to handle this. They're basically saying, hey, let's let the Sonoran Desert be the deterrent, because nobody is going to be stupid enough to try to cross the border in those harsh conditions. But the reality is that these folks are desperate. And as we saw, there are women, children, vulnerable adults, all in those groups, and they're not going to be able to make it to the other side of the border. And by not dealing with the situation in a meaningful way, the Biden administration is creating such inhumane conditions for these poor folk. Now, what happens on American soil? We are accountable for it. We are responsible for the deaths that happen on American soil, regardless of whether these folks are legal or illegal. And it is our job and responsibility to secure the border.
Absolutely, Pallavi. So the big thing here is, what resources do we actually have to secure the border? And to answer that, we should talk about who is securing the border at the moment.
Yeah.
Now, there are 3 agencies at play here. The first one is BORSTAR, or Border Patrol. The second one is ICE, or Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And the third one is just United States Customs. Now, U.S. Customs is probably the least significant. Their only job is really to process legal immigration requests. ICE's job is primarily deportations, and Border Patrol are the real frontliners.
Right. Yeah. So there are these 3 agencies, but here's the catch, right? I mean, the resources that we have on that border, they're not really enough, are they?
No, absolutely not. When we created these agencies, we did them primarily with the expectation that they would mostly be handling normal legal immigration. And now that's just become a small fraction of what their true job entails. The life of an average BORSTAR agent right now, their job is basically to trek through the Sonoran Desert and try to track down and rescue an illegal immigrant before they, well, in a small chance, maybe get to the United States mainland, but far more likely, die. And let's not forget, they're not superhuman. They're in the same conditions and they have the same disadvantages. They're in a 120-degree desert. Many BORSTAR agents die of heat stroke. Many die by tumbling on rocks. Many die by tripping, falling, being eaten by coyotes. It's a big deal. Not to mention the fact that unlike illegal immigrants, they're serious targets for drug cartels and coyotes who help transport illegal immigrant caravans. Often they're ambushed with bullets and rocks and sharp objects. They're basically in the middle of an active war zone.
So Ishaan, you mentioned the drug cartels. Let's talk a little bit more about that.
Sure thing. So drug trafficking in general is a huge issue at our southern border. About an estimated $65 billion worth of illicit narcotics enter the United States through the southern border every single year. If you remember, kind of back in 2012, 2014-ish, Barack Obama was talking a lot about the opioid epidemic and how much of a problem it was. And even at the time and currently today, U.S. officials say that the primary source of illegal opioids are coming from our southern border. And drug cartels, unlike illegal immigrants, are a little bit harder to track down and really pin for BORSTAR agents. So if we could free up their time and their availability, they could focus more on it.
So Ishaan, I think I heard you say that drug cartels are a little bit harder to pin down. Can you talk a little bit more?
So the reason that drug cartels are really difficult to pin down in comparison to illegal immigrants is because drug smugglers who do this frequently and for a profit, first of all, they gain a lot of expertise, and second of all, they rarely care about border defenses. This is a video by Wendover Productions titled "How to Illegally Cross the U.S.-Mexico Border."
They'll have scouts on both sides, wait for Border Patrol to leave the area, then install a ladder and quickly climb over. Cartels have been known to go even a step further and build tunnels under the border. In January 2020, U.S. Customs and Border Protection discovered the longest ever, a 4,300-foot, 1,300-meter structure stretching from Tijuana to San Diego. This facility was so advanced that it had ventilation, electricity, a rail system, and even an elevator. While it's unclear exactly who built and operated this tunnel, in the past, many of these have been linked to large crime syndicates like the Sinaloa cartel.
Wow, you wouldn't expect them to be that advanced, at the penetration at the border.
Well, why not? This is a huge market for these drug cartels.
True.
They're crossing, day in, day out.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they invest all their time and energy and money into circumventing the border defenses? And if you ask me, I would say that that's the perfect reason why we need to be focusing our infrastructure there.
Very true. Now we know that this crisis is at its peak right now.
Well, I'm going to have to pause you there, Pallavi. As Barack Obama famously said, don't underestimate Joe's ability to F things up. I wouldn't say it's at its peak right now until Joe Biden leaves office, and then I can be sure enough to place a wager on that.
Well, I mean, jokes apart, right? We know that even Trump, when he first ran, he talked about building the wall because the crisis had already, progressed quite significantly. But when did it all start? Like, how do we trace back to when did we start seeing this as a problem?
Well, illegal immigration has always been somewhat of a problem. But if you really want to ask me where the, I think, inflection point was, where it really became critical, I would say it was maybe 2010, 2013.
During Obama, then?
Yes, this was around the third year of Obama's presidency. He changed his immigration policy. And essentially what he did was, rather than deport all illegal immigrants, he only began deporting illegal immigrants with other criminal charges. And the problem with this was it sent a message to a lot of would-be illegal immigrants that said, oh, the United States is cool with us now, as long as we don't commit any crimes.
Right. I recall that before that, during the Bush era, and even before that, I think, the policy was, if you are caught as an illegal immigrant, you will be deported and you will no longer be allowed to enter the U.S. ever again in your life.
Yeah, since Clinton, I think no president besides Obama was dumb enough to think that we should just pretend that illegal immigration was not in and of itself a crime. And I like what you said about Donald Trump, because you're absolutely right. He got so much flack for really just reversing back to the Bush era policies, which, if you think about where we were, the crisis that we were in, yeah, that seems like the direction that we were supposed to be going. That still seems like the direction that we should be taking.
He saw the problem. He's like, okay, we changed this. It's not working for us. So let's go back to the way it was.
Right. If you remember Hassan Minhaj, the host of Patriot Act, honestly, I think he has no credibility, no intelligence, and frankly, no humor too. But he came up with this take in his second episode about illegal immigration.
As much as Trump loves to say he's going after bad hombres, that's not who he's targeting. In fact, just 1 month into Trump's presidency, deportation officers were explicitly told to take action against all removable aliens, which basically meant deport everyone no matter what. Let's be honest. Trump treats all undocumented immigrants like criminals.
Okay, so?
Yeah. He treats them like criminals because by definition...
They broke a law.
They are. I don't understand the point you're trying to make here. He's like, how dare he treat a dog like a dog? It's like, yes, that's the appropriate attribution.
So Trump had a solution. He said, let's build a wall. Of course, it was very controversial. Not many Americans liked it. And Biden, of course, campaigned on it, right? He basically said it's a racist, xenophobic idea. He's going to, fix the problem in a different way. But quite frankly, 1 year into his presidency, he hasn't done anything.
No, he hasn't. Well, actually, I don't know about that. Well, I have to correct myself here. I think he actually has done a couple things, just not good things. It's sort of like when you say, California, they're self-governing, they've churned out many policies. Well, yeah, but they weren't exactly helpful. So, first week in office, Joe Biden tears down parts of the border wall that Trump had already built and launches a multi-million-dollar investigation into, I cannot believe I'm saying this out loud, the environmental impacts of building a wall in the desert. In the desert. What are the environmental impacts? Slim to none, according to most estimates. But next, Joe Biden begins offering reparations to families of immigrants who were separated by Donald Trump. Oh, that evil, evil man. That evil, evil Cheeto. How dare he? Let's pay these families more than we pay our soldiers.
No, let's pay them more than the reparations that we give to our heroes that die in the line of duty.
Yeah, exactly.
That was just ridiculous. I saw that and I was just like, palm to face moment for me.
I don't know about that. For me, it was face to wall moment. But honestly, this might be the worst policy of all. And this is appointing Kamala Harris to be the border czar, because she just has such a great track record with solving problems, doesn't she? That's right, folks. She has done nothing. I literally mean nothing. She has not even visited the border. She has not proposed a solution. She has not talked to anyone there. She has not talked about a bill that needs to be sponsored, talked about a new proposal, a new plan of action. Nothing. Instead, she has jetted herself off to Poland where she can cackle off their heads.
No, I completely agree. I mean, in this situation, this has been a complete letdown. Joe, with a lot of pomp and show, appointed her the border czar. And honestly, there's nothing to show for it. In fact, I was shocked when I read that she hasn't even been to the border to see the situation for herself.
Right. If you remember, the excuse that she gave for this was, well, I also haven't been to Europe. I don't know what your point is. And then a couple months later, when she had to go to Poland for that diplomatic mission, a bunch of people on Twitter were like, well, now you've been to Europe. When are you coming to the border?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just not a priority for Biden and Harris, despite the fact that they campaigned so hard on this and basically painted Trump the villain for even, attempting to solve the problem.
Joe Biden is unwilling to do anything about the southern border because he's afraid that it might offend and alienate his base. And here's the problem with that. He is the president of the United States and he needs to grow a spine. Okay? It doesn't matter if it's going to potentially offend your base. You need to take charge of America and take care of the crises around us. This is vital to our national security and he simply doesn't care because it's politically disadvantageous. And by the way, this has been Biden's strategy since day one, and that is to ignore inconvenient problems until they become convenient problems or too large to ignore. Inflation doesn't exist. Russian aggression? Oh, please, that's a myth. Crime waves? This was a GOP narrative, actually. And now it's the southern border that apparently we're hallucinating and imagining.
Actually, I should take back what I said earlier. I know I said that this problem is at its peak, but it actually, some new developments just happened, didn't they, Ishaan, that made it almost an order of magnitude worse.
That's right, Pallavi. So Donald Trump, if you remember, he had these very controversial remain in Mexico policies. These were under the migration and protection protocols. And they basically, as the name suggests, they required asylum seekers looking to seek legal status in the United States to remain in Mexico while they await a court date. This was because a huge issue that we had and still have is people who enter the United States on a legal basis, but then overstay their visa or grace period or other welcome. So on the surface, that's a policy that you would think works really well, right? But in reality, a lot of people said that this creates many problems. Primarily due to backlog. People could be left in dangerous communities for months on end waiting for a court date. And so this was another thing that Biden campaigned on. He was saying, I'm going to get rid of Remain in Mexico. And supposedly he did.
Did he?
Nope. Intro, United States Code, Title 42, Chapter 6A, Subchapter 2, Part G, Section 265, enacted way back in 1944. This incredibly tiny law, written in only one sentence, gives the Surgeon General of the United States the ability to restrict immigration and trade and public health emergencies. Basically, under the guise of his otherwise perfect, as you know, COVID policies, Joe Biden reinstituted his own version of the Remain in Mexico policy while simultaneously taking credit for getting rid of it and sending an international message that our borders were wide open.
Yeah, no, well said. Absolutely. Like in Del Rio, Texas alone, 15,000 migrants are trying to enter the United States. They're overloading the aid capacity and Border Patrol. And the border staff there, they're understaffed, and it's leading to some terrible living conditions. There's not enough water. The conditions are not even sanitary. It's really hard. So, Ishaan, I mean, this is really ridiculous. What do you think is the Democrats' end goal here? Like, what exactly are they gunning for?
I'll be honest, Pallavi, I try to stray away from getting into Democrats' heads too often because you usually get lost with how little furniture or really anything is in there. But I think overall, this fits into their theory that if they can just get enough illegal immigrants into these civilian centers, then they'll be able to skew votes either by representing those areas more in Congress, or maybe their plan is to make these people citizens eventually so that they can vote on the federal level. And I think what they failed to recognize is that many of these people, once they become part of the electorate, they're not really interested in the immigration issue. I think that they might even think that they're appealing to their Latino base. And the reality is they're really not. Most Latino Americans who are here today are like, yeah, the immigration issue, I already made it. And, the more people that come, it actually hurts me a little bit. Even Bill Maher, he's like a total liberal. He even went on the Ben Shapiro show just a couple weeks ago, and he talks about how Democrats really kind of messed up their math on this one.
Immigration is an issue where I think the Democrats are really not getting it. They're losing the Hispanic vote.
It's an amazing thing.
Along the border in Texas. Their idea, again, it's sort of your point about identity politics. Their conception, I think, and it's wrong, is that every Latino in America is thinking, boy, more immigration. That would be the best thing. And a lot of them are thinking, no, I'm here.
Yeah.
The last thing I want is someone else coming over who's going to do my job for a little less money.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Democrats have gotten every single issue imaginable wrong. And this is the exact same thing with Biden, whether it is Russia or inflation or crime or BLM or the southern border. Democrats cannot do anything right. And here's the thing. The house of cards that Joe Biden's presidency sits upon is crumbling one issue at a time. And we are all what it's going to fall on.
Hey folks, Pallavi here. Thanks for watching this episode of Politics Corner. If you enjoyed this video, please like and comment. And if you want to see more videos like it, subscribe and click the notification bell so you know whenever Pegasus Brave releases a new video. Also, if you want to see more of our daily content, follow us on social media. Links in the description. We'll see you next time. Bye.